welcome to another edition of Real Talk Straight Talk. You know what? We've been so pumped and so excited to get with this show because we're going to talk about the slap around. You know what? Let me hold on for a minute. I'm forgetting my manners. Of course, I got to say very special shout out to, ISO. They're here. King is here. I've been on him for I don't know. How long have I? You know what? We're going to ask that question later. But I'm so happy to have the ISO group here. Zara's her first time, and Ash has been here. She's been on the show already, so she's like a veteran now, right? So, got to say a very special shout out to all our sponsors. I've got Angel from The Fix. She's in the building. She's like, I'm not on the show right today, but I got to make sure everything is right. Got to send a big shout out to, of course, Putter from Up Like 7 Barbershop. Big shouts to Kwame at United Cuts. Got to talk about my people in Hamilton, otherwise known as Soul Kitchen Radio. Go all the way down the highway to Ottawa, 613 Rhythm Movements Community Association. Coming back to London, of course, got to talk about Paranite Bar and Grill. Last but not least, Natalie and the crew over by RBC. And you know what? I said least, but you know what? I'm saving the best for last because I got to send a big shout out to the pastors over at the Wien Community Center, right? So I got everybody out of the way. And like I said, I'm excited to talk about, we've got a real issue to talk about. And let me go over the issue. First of all, the issue that we talked about, and this is part 2. We talked a few weeks ago with some of the DJs, Fresh C's, DJ Jose, and we talked about urban music and its representation in London, Ontario. We talked about London being designated Music City in 2021. What does it mean? And like I said, black music in London, Ontario, is it truly represented, right? So we're going to get to that in a few minutes. I think we're also going to have DJ Jose call in, so yeah, we got the phone lines for those of you that don't know, 519-694-3429. And you know what? Before we get to the slap, I'm going to let King and Asha and Zara talk a little bit and introduce themselves. And I'm going to go ladies first. Zara, you haven't been here, so I'm going to get you to welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Is my mic coming through?
Oh, it's coming through. I can see you right there. See that? You see the bottom there? You're going to see the green there, that's like your mic, and that tells us everything. So yes, we heard you.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Zara Habib. I am a DJ, a community organizer, a musician, an artist, and a lot of things. A lot of things. But I've been DJing here in London since 2019. I've worked in radio. I've worked in community development. I've done a lot of events with different festivals in the city, different cultural organizations, Pillar, Dundas Place, downtown London. And also I have a weekly radio show and community gathering space called Lunar Rotations. And my audience for that is kind of worldwide because it's on the internet. So I've done a lot of stuff in the virtual online world and streaming, especially over the pandemic. And that's opened up a lot of doors for me as a DJ, as an artist, as a musician. It's created connections for me from all around the world, to Toronto, to Los Angeles, New York, Amsterdam, or the Netherlands, places all over the world. So music is really what I'm all about. And I created the ISO project through my work with the Forest City Film Festival and the Music Office. And that was really just to connect different musicians and creatives in London. So yeah, music is my thing, and it's what I'm most passionate about. Same thing with creativity and with just uplifting artists. And I'm so happy to have connected with Asha and King on this project. And yeah, it's just up from here.
Before I get back to Asha, I'm just going to touch on your musical style, right? Because I want you to describe it, because you know what? I've listened to it. I remember you did some stuff for International Women's Day, right? I think were you in New York? Or were you back? I think, because I know I saw some stuff, I think a couple days before, about you being in New York, but I've seen you, she's on Facebook, you gotta see her sometimes. She's doing her thing, right? So I want you to describe your style, because it's not mainstream, right?
No.
So, yes, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your style.
Yeah, so, so when I started DJing, actually, no, I'll backtrack. So I've always been into stuff that speaks to the soul. So hands down, you know, no matter what musical genre it is that I'm playing or what musical genre it is that I am listening to, it's got to have soul. You know, it's got to be speaking to something that is real, that has a lot of substance, that makes you feel, that makes you think, that makes you laugh, that makes you cry, that makes you want to dance. I think that's like golden rule number 2. You got to be able to dance or move to it somehow, you know, just move to it. So when I started DJing, I had been collecting vinyl for a long time. So my music collection was pretty wide-ranging. But when I was DJing, I was mostly playing either old school hip hop or, I mean, I don't call it old school, but I say old school because hip hop is so many different sounds nowadays. But specifically, I was playing stuff that was basically from like 2000s and before. And, you know, a lot of 90s hip hop. That's kind of like my favorite era of hip hop.
Golden era.
Yeah, golden era. Yeah, that's my favorite era. That's my sound. You know, 90s, especially, you know, East Coast hip hop, you know, from New York. But then, and then I also played a bit of jazz as well, kind of. So I had 2 radio shows going because I needed to juggle, you know, hip hop and jazz. Then I started, I mean, I always had a love for funk, for disco. So I started to incorporate a lot more of that into my sets. And I mean, like, all these genres come from the same source, so they complement each other very well. So now, now I also play some deep house. I put some deep house into the mix.
Okay.
And here and there, you know, I'll throw in a reggae tune. And yeah, so it's funk, disco, deep house, dance music, hip hop.
And you got me on the funk because when I first came to Canada, I you know, got with a bunch of guys and we had a crew. And yes, even though it was predominantly reggae, right, we played a lot of funk.
Yeah.
So I've heard it. And the next thing was the records, right? Because
Yes.
you play records.
Yes.
Even though some of us have moved on from records, which is when I looked on and you were playing records and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it brought nostalgia back. But then I'm thinking that, you know what, when I played, it was 8 cases of records. And then I just was like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to keep my old ass on my control.
Well, you got Serato now, which is,
Yeah.
you know, I use Serato too.
Yeah, but I saw you on some records. That's why I remember one of the things I saw, and I'm like, yeah, I'm keeping my old ass back on Serato.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, welcome back.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself again, please.
I'm Asha Supal. I'm a social media and marketing coordinator. I'm also a big fan of community and connection, and that's kind of what led me to the ISO project. I want to build community, and that's in all sense of the word. I don't want to just focus on mainstream stuff. I want to focus on different avenues that have been untouched and kind of the different walks of life that want to add to the community as well. But yeah, I'm a creative in all sorts of ways, from writing scripts, focusing on film, cinematography, photography, painting, sculpting, pottery. I'll do a little bit of everything, yeah.
When you were on our first podcast, do you remember a little bit about the podcast?
Yes.
Yes.
International Women's Day.
And people, this month is International Women's Month, so it's just fitting that we're going to touch on that just for a minute, because this is the last week of the month and all that stuff, right? So it's great to have you back, and I want you to give a little summation of what being, you know, the topic that we dealt with, because you were with the women, you were with Angel and stuff, and, you know, like I said before, they kicked me off the podcast because I didn't have the right get-up for it, so it's all right. Now I'm back and I can get your experiences on
Yeah, the March 8th podcast was amazing. We really put a positive spin on feminism and what it means to us as women of color, which I think was really important, especially being in London, Ontario, where feminism is really cisgender, white female, power-led. You don't see a lot of women of color talking about their side of feminism. So yeah, you guys should definitely check that out. March 8th podcast that happened earlier this month. It was a good one.
King, now we're going to get to you. Little intro.
My name is King and Jerome. I'm actually originally from Mississauga. Been here since 2012. Came here to do clothing, so I work on the retail and wholesale side of clothing. In the last couple of years, I started doing short-term rentals, and then it led me into like short-term and long-term, as well as event planning and event rentals. In the last about year or so, I started doing some artist management. So I have 2 artists that I manage, and then the whole music thing just kind of opened wide open for me, like booking shows, doing promotions for shows and things of that nature as well, now that the world's open again. So I spent a lot of my time like managing different projects for different artists. So I've been doing that for the last little bit, and it keeps me very, very busy. So that's me.
Right. Now that we've met, you know, the ISO group, I'm gonna get to the topic I wanted to get to. Yes. And the reason I'm getting to it because it's everywhere.
It
so I'm
everywhere.
like, since it's everywhere, I'm not gonna be the one guy that's not talking about it. So, you know, put up with me for a minute, right?
Just seen it on CNN.
Oh, yes. So we're gonna get 2 different. We're gonna get the female perspective, and then we're gonna talk about the male perspective, right? People, of course, you know, we're talking about the slap. I call it the slap heard around the world. The only place they didn't hear it in real time was in North America.
Was
right?
it the Japanese feed?
Yeah, the
Caught
Japanese.
the audio.
Yes, some of the feeds outside of North America actually heard it, not just
Okay.
Japan, but yes. And so we got to hear the audio much later on. I wasn't watching the Oscars, so I was a little tired. I was like, yeah. I woke up to this.
You don't have to
right?
make an excuse for not watching it.
You know, I didn't. So
Yeah.
and I woke up to this, and I'm like, and for the last 2 days, it's been the slap, of course, the apology. Question that I wanted: do you think it would have happened if it wasn't Chris Rock and it was a white host?
No.
Yes.
I don't believe so.
I
don't
agree with that.
think Will would have got up and slapped it if it was a white host. No.
All right, ladies.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Will Smith would have even budged out of his seat. There's a meme going around. If it was the other Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he also wouldn't have gotten up and slapped The Rock because he would have just got slapped back. But I think it's more so of a publicity stunt than anything. And there was news today that Chris Rock's comedy tour actually sold the most tickets overnight than it has in like 5 months of ticket sales.
You're welcome, Chris.
Yeah, so Will
Got
Smith,
Slapped all the way to the bank. Right?
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
for sure.
Now, you want to chime in or no? You're like, do I really?
I was just laughing because I was picturing that situation, like a Will Smith going and slapping away.
There would have been swifter consequences if it was a white host.
swifter consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, then I stopped laughing immediately when I
Yeah,
thought
you
about
thought
that.
about that, 100%.
Yeah, but the image was kind of,
Well,
Yeah,
would have
and
been a
it
funnier situation.
kind of brought in, you know, that old black on black crime kind of, you know, and it truly made me think. And like I said, that was the first thing I thought: would he have slapped a white person, right? And even if it's a publicity stunt, why, and let's say Chris is also involved with the publicity stunt, why would 2 black people on that level stage a stunt like that, in that atmosphere?
Just from a production background and being on television sets and all that stuff, all the award shows the viewership is going down.
Absolutely.
The younger generations aren't into it as much as it was back in the day. There's so many other things you could focus on with social media and with all the different types of forms of media out there that I think they really needed to do something that makes people tune back in and watch. Like right now, there's 4 of us here, and not a single one of us planned on tuning into the Oscars or the Grammys or anything like that. And yet, here we are talking about it. So it definitely goes to show that publicity stunts work. But not only that, they're trying to build revenue for these types of award shows. The fashion industry is changing. Climate change is a huge part of this. People are really waking up to what's going into the fashion industry and Hollywood in general, and how much they're perpetuating capitalism, constantly trying to sell something right after the next. So people aren't tuning into these shows, and the fashion industry is really dying and trying to take a new turn. So if people aren't looking at the most blinged out gowns and dresses and they're not selling that, they have to find a way to get people to tune in again so that they could focus on all these other aspects of the show and not just the performances. So yeah, I definitely think it was a publicity stunt just from my background in production.
And like I said, I get the publicity stunt, right? But I'm wondering why, Chris, you know what I mean? Why as black males in an industry that's shown to repress and not give the exposure, why would you then allow that kind of exposure?
Yeah, well, their career's on the line. If they don't have award shows yearly, they don't get recognized for the movies that they put out. So they want to draw people into that crowd so that they tune into the movies, which is also taking a hit in 2022 because everything is digital, everything's streamed. They don't make as much revenue as they did maybe 15, 20 years ago. So it comes back to getting all eyes on the Grammys, getting all eyes on the Oscars, getting all eyes on these different types of award shows so that they have more opportunities for their work. Yeah.
Final thoughts, anybody?
I think that, I think it was the Grammys that just passed, maybe a month or so ago. Will Smith was on the red carpet. He was getting interviewed by, I forget the transgender black woman's name. Used to be on that jail show. I think it's Orange is the New Black. I don't know what their name is, but he was interviewed, and towards the tail end of the interview, the interviewer, had said something about, "We're looking forward to what you're doing and more entanglements," or something like that. Ultimately, Will just kind of took it on the chin and didn't say anything about it. But, you push people to a certain degree, they're going to react. And if you really think about it, he initially laughed. He initially laughed when the statement was made. It wasn't until he turned and looked at, because you saw, I don't know if you guys watched the clip, Jada immediately kind of rolled her eyes, right, while Will laughed. When the camera cut away, naturally, I'm sure Will turned and looked at his wife, saw that she was vexed, so that's when he kind of changed his perspective on the joke. It makes you question. It's all right, well, as women, how would you want? Let's say one of you was my girlfriend, right? And something occurred that I thought was funny that you did not. Sure, I can think it's funny, but then when I identify that you're uncomfortable, would you prefer I just continue to laugh, or would you prefer that I stood up for you and I made a move towards rectifying it? Not to say that the way in which he did it was correct, but you could tell that he pivoted in that moment when he looked at his wife. He pivoted because he laughed initially. Yes. So he pivoted when he saw that his wife was vexed. So I don't know, I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, I think it opens up another side of things is mental health.
Mm-hmm. He's not okay.
Yeah, I think that with having your life so public and open all the time and constantly being the butt of the joke, there's only so much you could take. And I think in that moment, he didn't really think it through because he's been in the industry for a long time, so he knows kind of how these things go. He knows the host most likely doesn't write his own jokes for these big shows. He knows all these things. So I don't think he really was in the moment. In reality, he was just in his emotions. Yeah.
My final thought on it is that Richard Williams, who he played, right, made a statement, and the statement says, "I do not condone what Will Smith did," right?
So, you guys kind of touched on something that I was thinking about it. I mean, the second thing is, like I'm a little amazed at all the analysis that is being put out there, and everyone say, like, there was a meme that I saw that said men will literally win an Oscar before getting therapy. And it's like, well, how do you know Will Smith hasn't had therapy? Like, why are we all acting as though we have a real intimate personal glance to these people's lives? Because we don't, right? Even though these people are famous, even though Will Smith has like a show on Snapchat and is, you know what I mean? Secondly, as you said, Asha, you know, he's been the butt of a joke since the whole August Alsina thing. And I can only imagine, if I put myself in Will's shoes, what that felt like, right? The humiliation, having very personal, private business of your own being put out into the world and then being ridiculed for that. And then how, like, think about also how old Will Smith is. He's in his 50s. So that generation of masculinity, of being a black man, is a very different reality than what a 20-year-old reality is like. You know, same thing. Belonging from the same demographic, same cultural background, etc. Like, generationally, values change so much. So, and then, you know, again, it's a different kind of relationship dynamic. And again, we don't know anything about their personal lives, even though Jada does Red Table Talk and, you know, talks about personal stuff, and Will does his own stuff. But at the end of the day, we don't know. And we don't know what the last couple of years have been like for, you know, him emotionally, for her emotionally, her with her alopecia, you know, what that has done for between the two of them. So that's all I'm going to say, because I don't really feel it's even my place to analyze anyone's intentions or anyone's knowing or anyone's, you know what I mean? Like, beyond that, because again, I don't even know these people. So, but another thing that I actually was thinking was acting is also a very immersive art form. And I didn't watch the movie King Richard, but nor do I really know what it's about. I've heard him speaking about it in an interview a couple months back, but I gotta be honest, I don't really remember what it's about. But if there was any sort of, you know, difficult trauma that the character that he played had to deal with, maybe he's still carrying some of that. Did anybody watch the movie? Does anybody know what the movie is about? Or?
I saw some of it.
Yes, I know what it's about.
Yeah, I know the premise, yeah.
It's about Venus and Serena's father.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
right.
And
okay.
the challenges you have to overcome.
The challenge,
So,
yes.
Right. So, and again, Will Smith is a very seasoned actor. So, and I've heard other actors say this, that sometimes when you have to play a difficult role, you actually have to put yourself, I mean, some of the better actors do this, they'll really embody that character as much as they can. Like, I heard Mahershala Ali talking about, what was this movie, Green something was in the title.
Green Book?
The Green Book.
Yeah.
And he had to play,
Mahershala Ali or something?
yeah. He had to play,
The driver? Or no, he was the pianist.
he was a pianist
Yes,
that asked, I think it was a white driver to
Yes.
drive
Yes.
him around the
Oh,
racist
yeah,
South.
yeah. I did
the
see
South,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And there were parts in that role where he had to act out domestic abuse, domestic violence. And he was saying that takes you to a very dark place, even just the action of that. He didn't actually abuse the woman he did in the scene. He never made contact with her. They acted that out. But, he said that was kind of disturbing to him, to even feel himself be in that position, even though he was acting. So again, like, just to take this to Will's case, we don't know, right? We really don't know. I mean, and I think people really need to mind their own business, because it'd be helpful for everybody.
I hear you.
Minding your business is a lost art nowadays.
So much. Social media. You cannot mind your business with social
You
media,
can't,
right?
you can't, no.
Actually, we're going to dedicate a podcast to social media, right? So we know that's coming up. Another one of our podcasts is also, once again, going to touch on mental health, which we just brought up. Every so often we do podcasts on mental health. It sort of blew up in this time, and I can say this time because my time we didn't talk about mental
Absolutely
health, right? I'm coming from an older Caribbean background. We didn't talk about mental health in that aspect. But the beautiful thing about this time that we're in, starting I think let's say around really 2017 or so, it really started to come to the forefront. And in the last 2 or 3 years, it's really been there. is that that's a whole discussion that's coming out. And so once again, we're going to get in that. I think it's in a few weeks from now, we have some people coming back to mental health. Now, I think it's time we get to why, why we're all here. Thank you for, letting us know what ISO does and what it's here for. As I said before, the title of this was London becoming a music city. Do we have the representation in, let's say, urban music, right? Or black music, it's urban blacks, sort of like saying, is there the right representation? And where do groups such as yourself fit in bringing that to the forefront?
I feel that's our undertaking at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, our goal is to kind of bring artists of color to the forefront. That's what we're looking. Those are the people we're looking to elevate. So,
Yeah, in a place like London, like when if you want to ask about, let's talk specifically about black music. It's to me it's a little bit more something to wrap your head around, because there are black people in London, but a question that you hear so many people ask is where?
Yeah.
Where?
It takes a minute to find.
Yeah, and even just talking about like artists of color and musicians of color, the role of ISO is to elevate them and bring them to the forefront, and it's something that's needed in a place like London. Like being in somewhere like Toronto or New York, these kinds of things are almost not necessary. For one thing, because the way that the different communities reach out and connect with each other is very different. London is kind of, because of the way it has been built, because of how it's been zoned and how it's just like it's not very well connected, to be honest. It's a little bit harder for communities to see each other, to meet and to gather, and especially musicians, because that's a very particular kind of community that usually gets built very organically. So what ISO is trying to do is organically build that sense of community by just making people be in spaces to meet one another, to connect, to network, to play music, to create new relationships and collaborations. But we are curating it. We are putting a lot of work into making it actually rise, and making sure that we ourselves are connected through the program to the who's who in London, right? As far as the music office, the film festival, these organizations. But we are still trying to really keep the spirit of what it is to be a musical or a creative community, at really be the foundation of that. So we're keeping these collaborations and these connections as organic and natural as possible. We're coming at it from a real place. But we have to be entrepreneurial about it. There's no way around that.
It's because it doesn't exist.
Because it doesn't exist.
It's up to us to kind of create it. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is that like Zara was saying, is that it's incredibly segmented. I came here in tail end of 2012, and I asked the same question, where is the ethnicity? What's going on? And it took me a minute to find the different pockets and so forth. And like I said, it's segregated. This group doesn't mess with this group, and so forth and so on. So there's these different sectors, and you have those politics in any city you go to, right? But I can speak for myself. As a clothing store owner, my demographic of least engagement is black men, and that's just because. I don't know if individuals see you as competition or opposition, whatever it may be, as opposed to finding allyship, they prefer to go the opposite way. That's a challenge. And like I said, I've been here for 9 years now, and there's people, which is fine because obviously I've been able to navigate through these challenges, but there's people that have never been in my store that will shake my hand and say what's up and all that stuff, and that doesn't bother me anymore. But it's one of those things where here we are working towards music. We're looking to put people in the same room, have people build with one another, have people lift each other up, which actually speaks to an event that we're having on April 9th, which we'll get into later. But it's about putting people in the same room and seeing what each of you have to offer and how you can contribute to each other.
I'm just going to add to that because I think because the demographic is so dispersed that usually you see other people as competition because you don't think that you could fit in the same spaces. And I think that's why ISO is so passionate about getting these groups of people, helping them see what they have in common, what they're doing that can benefit each other, and how everyone can collaborate to make the dream as successful as possible.
Yeah, like there's definitely a thing in London, again, because it's small, because it's still really figuring itself out as a music city and what is its creative cultural identity, because again, like that word culture is so like hot, you know, when you say it in London, it's like, ooh, what's, you know, what do you mean? But we don't want there to be a scarcity mentality. Like one thing that, because I'm coming from a music background, one thing that was really surprising for me when I figured it out in London is that musicians don't know each other, which is so, like, it's actually kind of crazy, because in a city like Montreal, in a city like New York, you know, where music is so much a part of the fabric of life in those cities, it's a regular thing for musicians to know each other because, you know, they put each other on one another's gigs. If they can't make a gig, they'll call up their friend and says, hey, I can't do this, can you come on? Or they'll refer, you know, they'll refer people to be on their projects. And this is that natural building of community that really, that's how it happens. It's all through knowing people and playing in the same spaces and playing together on the same gigs. And that, I've spoken with a lot of musicians here, and they say that doesn't happen.
Exist,
they really stick kind of in their own cliques. And I've spoken with filmmakers who've said the same thing. From what I've heard, is that most of the filmmaker community either stems from students who are at Fanshawe or students who are at Western. And then if you're not in those, you're just working independently for yourself or with another company. But there isn't that, there's no like collaborative spaces, there's no meetup groups unless you're part of the student group. And I think that contributes to a bit of a scarcity mentality in London, where it's like, you know, it's not just competition, but it's this feeling that there's only a certain number of gigs, only a certain number of jobs out there for you to get. So you have to get all of them, and that you can't, you know, be allies with other people because they are your competition. And it's like, no,
that's not true.
That's so limiting for actual creativity to flow, because you're limiting it to only being a certain number of people who can do this kind of work. And then people don't also, they're just thinking about what jobs they can get that will pay them. But how about you collaborate and just create something that nobody's paying you to do, but you're doing it from a place of love, you know, from a place of passion, from a place of, let's explore this creatively. So this is really what is at the bottom of ISO, is that again, that like natural, organic, truly authentic love for exploring different creativity through the mediums of music and film. And, you know, we're bringing in so many more aspects to that, like truly. So, and it's really exciting and it's really beautiful. The outreach has been like phenomenal. And so it just tells us how a project like this is really, really needed in London, and there's people who want to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. And we really saw that through the application process. Our applications are over right now, but the number of people that said, even if I could volunteer and just be a part of it in that way, really warms your heart, because it just goes to show that even though a lot of people only see that there's a limited amount of gigs, they still want to be a part of the community now that there's kind of something, a foundation for them to kind of be a part of.
And I'm going to touch on the point where it was said about the limited amount of spaces and the limited amount of avenues. When we did part one and we talked to the DJs were talking about how many places they were to play downtown when you wanted to play R&B and hip-hop, or hip-hop, R&B, reggae, and all that stuff, right? And then they compared it to my time. And it's the same fight 20 years later, right? That there's a limited amount of spaces. As you can tell, a limited amount of spaces also limits creativity, right? But it's kind of also where we haven't had the forward thinkers, I think, and I'm going to call it forward thinking. Whereas, yes, you know what, there are challenges to being in London, Ontario. Being in London, Ontario means you're not going to turn around and just be able to practice your craft at just on a regular basis. When I say your craft, I'm talking about, once again, we're in the urban environment. That's hip hop, reggae, dance, you know, the whole Afro beats, the whole thing. You can't just turn around and say, oh, by the way, there's a place for me here, there's a place for me there. But then, do we have the people that then turn around and say, well, you know what, let us create, right? So we can talk about the lack of spaces, but then it's also comes down to the people, somebody saying, hey, let us put this together and create. There's never been an ISO project that I've known of since I've been here. I can say that my first years here, I was fortunate enough to cross over. So when I was here, I crossed over into playing reggae and all that stuff into the biggest white bars that were here at the time. Now, my other experiences are when I started it coming here, there were places that would look at you and they'd look at you funny and you know they didn't want you, and there are places I can say that wanted you to play the more commercialized stuff. So if you started to go one way, then they weren't trying to hear you. I was fortunate to meet up with big guy.
Steve?
Not just Steve. Steve I've known forever. Steve is the reason why I came to London, right? So I've known him forever. He used to bring me out to do stuff. I used to do DJing and sound. I think one of the very first CSO parties ever in London. CSO used to hold actually big parties where there was like 12 to 1,500 people at one point. That's that's where CSO, and we're one of the first people to do a CSO party, right? So this is going back like 25 years. I wasn't even living here at the time. I was just, they used to bring me in from Toronto, right? But coming here, Steve had said there's going to be some opportunities, but when I got here, I didn't see all that I needed to see, because I came into Toronto's hustlers mentality. So I hustled, and with Steve we hustled, and then we crossed over, and we truly crossed over, and we ended up at a place called The Drink, which is now Cowboys, right? Cowboys there. That used to be one of the bigger bars. Well, it still is one of the, in terms of size. But they also had they also embraced the urban demographic, because they had a room that just played hip hop and R&B, right? And then I think by the time I came along, kind of forced, they kind of adapted playing a little bit more hip hop in the main room, because I came into the main room, right? Then after that, where Moxie's is right now it used to be the Phoenix, and then on Thursday night it was just an urban night. After that, it kind of like the scene just dissipated, right? Because it was, and I looked at it as they're club owners in London that, well, thank God those guys are gone, because there went a truly urban base. And then you had Jim Bob Ray's, which is Toboggan, Toboggan now. It was Jim Bob's then, and of course Jax came in, and those, you know, that was that pop vibe. They didn't really, you know, if you were a black person, you would be more like a student from Western as opposed to somebody that lived here. So there's always been that split, students, locals, right? So that's a little bit of how London was. So along that way, it's the same effect for an artist, right? They didn't have the places because there wasn't clubs, or there were people that were interested in having that. And the ones that were interested, it was more of a hardcore sense. And on the artist side, there wasn't anything for them. So for DJs, there was the Caribbean Club and stuff where you could go on, and that was more dance hall and stuff, right? But at least there was something. But there wasn't anything for the artists, the earlier hip hop artists, right? You know, they didn't have these avenues. And there still isn't, and the funniest thing, there still isn't avenues. But they really weren't getting recognized. Whereas I can see Casper was getting recognized by London Music. There was nobody back then that was getting that kind of recognition. There used to be Scene magazines where Scene was responsible for, that's where you had to go to get the awards. And you got to look at it. How many people in the urban demographic were actually picking up a scene magazine to read, to vote? So consequently, the winners of those, the winners in anything was the white demographic, right? And it was skewed towards that EDM, that rock and all that other stuff, because that's what, and the rock demographic, as it was in other places all over Canada, wasn't really, you know, they weren't embracing the hip hop demographic, because the older rock heads look at it as hip hop guys weren't playing music. They were stealing samples, they couldn't play an instrument, the blah, 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 and the case went on. And that was even more so in London, Ontario. So, which brings us to you guys, right? As being forward thinkers. I remember one of, like, you know, we had this on the Instagram and when we did the IG stuff, and I said, you know, I love where you guys were going because you brought something fresh, and you had the experience to pull it off too, because I know you've been, I think you were in Radio, were you at Radio? Yes, you were, because I remember Josie saying, yeah, that was my manager over there and all that stuff. So you had the background to be able to pull it off. Where did the idea come from? I never asked that. Where did the idea come from?
ISO?
Yes, yes. I didn't ask it on the IG, and you know what? Let me ask it here. Where did it come from?
So in 2020, the Forest City Film Festival did its first year with they introduced the music video category into their festival. And the Forest City Film Festival has, I think, been going for 6 years in London. It's a film festival that focuses on southwestern Ontario, so it's not just London. It's not local, it's regional. And in 2020, they added a music video category. And at that time, I was program director at Radio Western. And so because of that, I was asked to co-host the awards. And it was virtual, so we recorded it kind of like this. I was in the on-air studio at Radio Western and, you know, doing it this way. And prior to that, when I was preparing my presentation, like what I was going to say, I noticed that in the submissions, there was very, very little diversity, not just as far as the artists, like who the artists were, but the genres of music. There were, the person who ended up winning that year was, it was Status Non-Status, so an Indigenous band. And the runner-up was, I can't remember if that was a person of color or not, but all in all, it was like very, very little diversity. And for a category that's supposed to span basically half of the province of Ontario, so we're not just talking about London, we're talking about, you know, from here up until just the outskirts of Toronto City, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And again, understanding that this is the first year of this specific category, so, you know, it's not like they're going to have a huge reach, but I still felt that something needed to be said to address it. At least you know, for better or for worse, I saw it as my responsibility. Also being kind of one of the only people of color who was working, you know, kind of not only in Radio Western, but on the film festival and the music video category committee. So I said to them, you know, I'm going to say something about this in my presentation, just so you all know. And they were like, okay. And so I basically, you know, when I was looking at the camera, I said, just to paraphrase, I said something like, to all of the artists of color who are watching this, you know, as someone who has grown up in London and has been here, I know that it's been a normal thing over time, or it's been a historical thing over time, to not see ourselves represented in award shows, in you know, city-based institutional, organizational stuff, just stuff that is at the higher level of recognition. But that doesn't mean that these spaces are not for you. In fact, we need you. You know, we need you to put yourself out there. This was kind of like my main message, is that I was speaking to artists of color, and I said, if you see this, if you're watching this right now, and you feel that you're not represented or you don't see yourself represented, please put yourself out there. You know, so the music office heard that, and then the following year, when we were doing our planning, they came to one of our meetings and said, we want to do something about this. So we have this amount of money that we want to give to doing something to help fix this problem, but we don't know what to do. we don't know if this is going to be a grant, is this going to be a scholarship, where's this money going to go? They didn't have any idea of what would happen. So I volunteered myself and I said, okay, let me take this away and I'll come back with a couple things. And then I really just kind of dreamt up the whole incubator idea kind of just from scratch. I just thought in my head what makes sense, what would help London, what are some of the needs of the artists here, of the filmmakers here, and also one thing that I kind of was really thinking about a lot as I drew up the project was that London suffers from a bit of a brain drain issue. So, a lot of talented people are here, but because there's that lack of opportunity, they don't build the connections that they need, they don't have the community that they need to really support them. There isn't a whole plethora of jobs or of gigs ready waiting for them that they can just snatch up. That's why they leave. They'll go to Toronto, they'll go to Montreal, they'll go to Vancouver, wherever. So how can we build something? How can a program like this accommodate something that stays, So initially, I wanted the ISO project to really take from Fanshawe Western students on the filmmaking part. Through planning and through, then the team grew. Asha and King joined on the team because there was no way that I could do that by myself. We kind of decided, let's just leave this open to anybody who was willing to apply. So there's no age limit. You don't have to be a student. And it's not even like this is only for people who are at the beginning stages of their career. We want this to be also a learning opportunity for people. It's not just an opportunity for people to collaborate and meet and create a dope music video, but it's like, let's put you in the position to be in a professional space where you feel like you are worthy of being there, that your work is valuable, that you have the skills, you have the talent, you have the right to be in a space like that, because again, people of color sometimes in London especially, or just maybe in just anywhere where we don't feel valued, we can just accept scraps, or we can just accept the first thing that comes to us without asking for more, without asking for our worth. And I didn't want anyone in London to feel that way. It's like, no, if you're dedicated to your craft, then you deserve to be in a space where professionals are helping you, So, yeah, that was the thing of ISO.
Where did you make the connection to?
So Asha, I actually met at last year's music video category event, and that was in person. So 2020 was virtual, and last year 2021 was in person, and the showcase was at, I want to say Hard Rock Cafe, but it's not there yet.
It was
the
at
Factory.
Kellogg's. Yeah.
It was at the Factory, and Asha was there, and she knew someone who I was working with, Savannah, on the music video category, and she had actually told me about Asha. She told me about you beforehand, because we had been talking, and I was saying I want to recruit more people to join me, and so she mentioned Asha to me that she'd be great in the graphics and social media world, and she had told me that you were interested. So then that's where we met face to face, and it was a wonderful connection, great energy, and Asha, you told me how much you were into the idea.
Yeah.
And I felt that was so genuine from you. So then that was kind of immediate. And then King, I also knew through, we had several mutual friends in common, and all those friends were doing their own creative things. And I knew that you were involved in music and you were managing people. And then I knew that you had the jump off. So at first actually, I was thinking of King to be a stylist on the set.
Okay.
So for the music video, because I knew he had the jump off, and I thought, okay, King's got a store, so let's bring him into the mix so that your strength. And again, like the whole point of ISO was what community can we build through the people who are already here? Like I don't want to reinvent it. We didn't want to reinvent anything, but it was like whatever is existing, let's bring it in. So that's how what I initially thought about when I went into the jump off and talked to King. But then, it just, as we were kind of talking some more, it kind of became clear that not only does he have the skill set to provide a whole lot more, but that you were also very passionate about it, and that you really were into the project just the same way that Asha was. So then, yeah, that's how it happened. Again, organic, natural, through some real connections, and yeah, just having a good energy.
How's the working relationship been going?
It's been awesome.
Oh yeah, amazing.
It's been great. We have a lot
Honestly,
of fun.
I don't mean to toot our own horn, but we've been killing it.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get back to the music city, right? When you think of London being designated a music city by UNESCO, what comes to mind? I know what came to my mind, right? I looked around, I'm like, wait a minute. Is London diverse enough to be considered a music city? Because when I'm thinking of a music city, coming from a Toronto background, I've had the opportunity to play in Montreal last weekend. I was out in Edmonton, and I get a chance to go around. Still, I'm thinking diversity, right? It's a music city. It should be diverse. And I'm thinking London didn't have that diversity. Now, I'm going to say big shouts to the guys up at the music office, right? Corey and them, I've been having conversations with Corey. I know, he's there trying to head in the right place, right? And I think they have to head in the right place because now they're a music city. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to say that some place should be a music city, obviously I'm going to say, first thing I'm going to say should be Toronto, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not. So what do you think about London being designated a music city?
I think it's great. I think it's not Toronto because there's too many fish packed in a can. Whereas London, there's space for growth and there's space for that development and there's space to really get to the grassroots of things and create that culture from the ground up. Whereas Toronto, it's already kind of established. Everyone's kind of fighting for a seat at the table and it's already put on by Drake and whoever else.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. They can grow. The city can grow into the title.
Okay.
Kind of like grow into being a real music city. Like, it's wild because here we are. We designated a UNESCO music city, but our music venues are all closing at an alarming rate.
Yes.
Right. So if you take a step back and you really look at the landscape of the music industry in the city, it makes you think like, wait, how did this happen? But once again, like, I think it gives it's challenges or opportunities. That's really just what it is, right? So I think it's an opportunity for London to grow into that title, and hopefully the ISO project can assist in that.
And I'm going to go one step further and say one of the reasons it can grow is because of the urban ads, because that's the place where the explosion needs to happen. The reason is, and we're going to talk about the venues closing down. And if you look at the venues that have closed down, especially the ones that I know of, like 2 years ago was Norma Jean's, and that used to be, once again, and that was a rock blues atmosphere.
APK, Call the Office.
Yeah, Call the Office, right? And so on the rock side, they're losing ground, and that's a fact. Rock is no longer the staple in London or even Canada.
Anywhere for that matter.
Yeah. So it needs the urban embrace. It needs to explore its urban roots, right? So that's where we get to losing the venues. Now, another venue just closed down. I think they're going to look to open back up, which was 765.
He's pivoting.
He's pivoting.
He's pivoting to like a new location.
Yeah, and
I actually spoke to him today.
And I'm fortunate because with 765, I've supplied sound for them for like since he's been in the business.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, so and with that venue, it's one of the few venues that was really open to anything, right? I gotta say big shouts to Jimmy over at 765. He does rock, he does country, he does jazz. He'll do anything, and there's nothing that he won't do, right? A lot of underground hip hop is done at 765. I know they have a show coming up.
No, they're closed now.
No, they're closed, but there's actually a show coming up because he's got
the other gentleman working with him.
Yeah, so Jimmy's he's pivoting to do that as well. So we need venues as well. My guys have been like, hey, they walk around and they give me all these signs, and actually, you know what this sign is. It means that we're almost out of time, right? So I'm gonna squeeze an extra minute or two. only because, you know what, you said there's something coming up on April 28th, right? Is that what you
April
said?
9th.
April 9th.
April 9th, sorry.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of
Okay.
stuff coming up, but yeah,
All right,
ours
so
specifically
yes,
is,
your specific, yeah,
Yeah.
you said, okay, so what's coming up?
it's April 9th. It's the ISO launch party. You guys want to get into it a little bit? Asha?
Yeah, so we're just setting up an event where our artists that applied really get a space that they could own themselves, like own the stage, perform if they feel comfortable and if they feel ready, or if they don't feel ready, like seek out those opportunities as a little stepping stone.
Right.
April 9th, what date is that? What day
That's a
is
Saturday, so it's like, I think it's 2 Saturdays from now. So it's
Okay.
going to be held right on Dundas Street, right downtown, in between Wellington and Clarence on Dundas. The venue is called Ziegel House.
Okay.
It's funny, like the genesis of Ziegel House kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier, people being proactive. I started Ziegel House because I had approached Music Hall to do an art show called OAC, Our Arts Collective. They had an artist in there that was upstairs that was doing a show. There might have been like 6 people in there. The artist did not pay for the venue, and they were just collecting, the Music Hall was just collecting door, which was a dismal amount of revenue because, like I said, there was like 6 people in there. I was around the corner at one of my Airbnbs, and I was there with at least 8 people, so I brought all my friends over there just because I wanted to actually have a conversation. You obviously, you know Jay,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So like I went over there to talk to Jay and like see if like the venue would be feasible for me to like to rent moving forward for OAC. I went in there, and I take responsibility for this. I was wearing grills at the time, which I probably shouldn't have been doing. Like, that was just a wild thing to wear when you're going to a business meeting or when it's like an impromptu thing. But long story short, Jason took me for a big tour of the spot, and then he introduced me to
Michael DeBici.
one of the management. I'll just say that. And
I can tell.
and ultimately, he gave me a wild fee, like a wild fee. So that's what kind of like, it motivated me to make my own spot. So, like I said, in between Clarence and Wellington, there's a spot called Ziegel House. It's on the 2nd floor. It's about duality. So it's an Airbnb, but I designed it, like I renovated the entire spot, and I designed it so it can actually also hold events.
Okay.
So on April 9th, we're having ultimately like a showcase where we're going to showcase all the finalists. We're going to have the applicants from the production side as well come through. There's going to be execs from Forest City Film Festival,
Like
London,
a who's who.
yeah, London Economic Development Corporation, London Music Office, London Arts Council. I reached out to one of my friends. He's actually an A&R for SOCAN. He'll be there as well. So it'll be a really good opportunity for all of these creatives to kind of like you know, interact with one another, but also seek opportunities with these execs that can kind of put them in position. But more importantly, we are announcing the winner of the actual ISO project, who is going to receive the actual music video.
Well, we're not going to announce it at the event.
It's
but
a
we're-
build-up to that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Can I bring you guys back and get you guys to make the announcement? You know. Oh, yeah.
How about you come to us?
All right. You know what? I was coming on the. You know,
Yeah,
since you
yeah,
guys
yeah,
put
yeah.
it on. Yeah, I'm coming on the 9th.
Yeah.
Coming on April 9th.
For sure.
Thank you. Once again, people, this is the ISO project. I'm sure we're going to get you back. I don't know what else to say. I want to thank our sponsors at this time. Of course, we're here at Up Like 7 Barbershops. I got to say a big shout to put in the crew. They're over there. People, I'm pointing to them over there. One day we're going to get him on camera. I'm going to get the guys to swing around the camera and he's actually the only one that's being, yeah, swing it around right now, swing it around. People, this is what we're doing. This is what, swing, and take a shoulder swing. Oh, yeah, let's get it. Big shouts to our big sponsor. We've got Angel over here. She doesn't want to be seen, but once again, Up Like 7 Barbershop. Yeah, you can swing it back around. Thank you. You know, so many sponsors right now. Of course, where do I start? Wayne Community Center, of course, Pastor T and them. They gave us our start, or you know, they helped facilitate it. So we always give big shouts to them. Congress of Black Women, because we've always sponsored things that they did and vice versa. They've been with us as well. Hamilton, we've got this radio station called Soul Kitchen Radio, so big shouts to Big John from Soul Kitchen Radio. There's Rhythm Movements Community Association in Ottawa. We're going to be collaborating with them on a few things. Back to London, we do events at Paranite Bar and Grill and Commissioners. Big shouts as well to United Cuts. And did I get everybody this time? Oh, the Ladies of Ollie, commercial interiors design, the Ladies of Ollie. We actually shot a few things at their venue. So thanks to everybody. This is what, and who?
Pride.
Oh, where can I go? Stephen, forgive me. I got to send a big shout out to Stephen and everybody over at Pride. They've been a supporter of us on the podcast and our other events like the Essence and Culture Awards. So big shouts and thanks to Steve and everybody at Pride. This has been another edition of Real Talk Straight Talk. Next week, look out. You're going to see the flyer out, I think, by Friday. And as we like to say, this is a fade to black, right? So,
Hey.
oh man, fade to black.